You're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Sports Podcast. I am here tonight with my ever-faithful co-host, Carlos. Like always, I'm going to go ahead and ask Carlos, how are you doing this lovely week in January?
James, I'm doing well. My roommates are outside in the living room aggressively playing NHL 21. Lots of yelling in the background here. It's been a good week. It's a good start to my week. Decent classes going well in the first couple of weeks here. And it's been a good time. Just enjoying life right now. Enjoying the Rowdies news as it rolls out. Doing a lot of reading for all these classes, and it's not that much of a good time, but you know what it is. It's rolling with every punch. James, how about yourself?
Yeah, I have a pretty big occasion coming up this week. I am actually getting married on Friday, but before I do that, I figured I might as well sit down with my co-host Carlos and talk about the Rowdies, because while we don't have any games, obviously, to go over, Carlos, we do have a lot of news recently. There have been quite a few signings, and so while we're still a few months away from the season, we figured that we might actually get into it this week. And you and I can go over not just the Rowdies' latest signings, but what this team that they're building might actually start to look like in terms of formation, maybe a starting 11 even. Let's see if we could create one at this point. I'm not sure that we have enough players, but you know what? Let's just give it a try, Carlos. Before we actually get into that, I do want to say, of course, please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at RBLR Sports. And please like and subscribe to our podcast on all major podcast platforms. Now, Carlos, let's go ahead and list all of the new signings that have been announced so far up until this past week. And then I want to take a second moment to actually go through the people who were listed last week, because they were some big names, obviously. Let's do that in a bit.
Yeah, James, lots of big signings, as you mentioned, a couple of big ones that we're going to talk about here. Ones I'm obviously very excited about, and I know everybody else in the Rowdies family is very, very excited about. So, going to be a blast to talk about here, James, and I guess we can just hop into it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's really quickly go back over the names that we've talked about the past couple episodes, guys that we just new signings, guys that I'm very excited about, including Charlie Dennis, Zach Harivo, Freddie Kleeman, Connor Sparrow, and I think most notably out of those names, most exciting for me personally is J.J. Williams. The two newest guys announced, James, aren't so new, actually. Guys that are very near and dear to the hearts of Rowdy's family across the Bay Area, across the state of Florida. These guys, Forrest Lasso, if that name rings a bell, and Jordan Doherty, two guys who have been with us for a little bit of time, briefly left the squad last year, played one season overseas, respectively. And now they're back home in Tampa Bay, James. And I know the entire Rowdies family is just super duper excited about that. I'm so excited about what they bring to the team. And I guess we're going to jump into that in a little bit as well. So I'll save my thoughts on what they can bring back after their time overseas. So I think it's a good time here, James, to go over who these players are. Let's revisit their position, what they bring to the team, what they did overseas this past couple seasons, and how they got back to Tampa Bay. And before we do any of that, James, I think just want to remind everybody that liking and subscribing is free, but if you do need some new threads, you can support this podcast by heading over to shop.rblrsports.com and checking out all the designs that have been cooked up there. The link is in the description, and use the promo code COYR for a big fat 10% off your purchase. Definitely go ahead, check that out, take advantage of that discount. James, let's skip all the appetizers here. Let's go right to the meat and potatoes of this. Forrest Lasso and Jordan Doherty are back. I'm excited. What happened last season? Where were they? And how the hell did they end up back here in Tampa Bay?
Yeah. did have stints abroad in Europe, and I suppose that isn't actually abroad for Jordan Doherty. I think that we're the abroad for him, but that's fine. Yeah, he is Irish originally. He came through the Norwich Academy system or City Academy in England, and then he came originally on loan to the Rowdies. We signed him, and he did pretty well his first couple of seasons, Carlos, and then he had, I guess, what would probably be described as a so-so season. And from there, he went back to Ireland, and last year he played at the club Bohemians. Bohemians, I have looked it up, finished 6th in the Irish League. That is the top division in Ireland, the Premier Division, I believe it's called. And it was I suppose a good season. He made 32 appearances, and according to the statistics to be found online. But I can't say that I had a ton of viewing of the Irish League. I will go ahead and lay all my cards out there. I can't tell you where to find the Irish League in terms of streaming it, but
Sure.
I'm sure obviously that getting the regular playing time that he did over there, that's what you need as a young player. And I think that making 32 appearances over the course of the year, that's obviously indicative of him getting the proper playing time that he's looking for. And apparently the proper playing time necessary for the Rowdy staff to consider him and bring him back. I'm assuming expecting him to come back a better player and a more well-rounded player.
Yeah. It seemed like his time away at Bohemian was practically a loan. I mean, obviously, almost like a one-season loan, except it wasn't. He came back eventually after that season. But yeah, like you said, ton of appearances, logged 2,155 minutes, according to the stats online. Played mostly at right back, scored 1 goal, and only made 1 error leading to a goal. Like you said, Bohemian finished in 6th on the table. I know by their standards is one of the biggest teams in that league, underperforming. But by all accounts, Jordan Doherty had a very, very good season, made a great impression. And I guess, like you said, enough to make the Rowdies want to go out on a limb and bring him back home to Tampa Bay. Really, really versatile player. If you guys remember, last couple seasons he played with the Rowdies, played a bit all around, was a defensive midfielder, was a center back sometimes was a right back. At Bohemian, played mostly right back, and I think based on that might be where he ends up playing most of his time here with the Rowdies. But again, really versatile player and can play, I guess, wherever he's needed. So it's really, really useful to have, and I'm just generally very excited to have him back here in Tampa Bay, James.
Yeah, I think the fact that he actually played a significant portion of his time at Bohemian at right back, that kind of helps him out in a way that maybe he was not getting when he was with the Rowdies originally. Because anyone who knows Jordan Doherty, specifically from his time with us, with this club here in Tampa Bay, knows him as either a midfielder or in certain circumstances, a backup center back. He would fill in every so often for the other guy that we are going to mention here, Forrest Lasso, or Jordan Scarlett, another recent player for the Rowdies. So, yeah, I think that if he has spent all his time at right back, obviously those are different responsibilities, and you have to imagine that he's either going to get better as a 1v1 defender, or depending on the way that Bohemians tried to line up and the way that they tried to execute their game plan, he might have even got a little bit better as an attacking player. And if you think about the way that the Rowdies use wingbacks, it's very frequently in a very attacking role. Obviously, you have to be defense first, as a former center back like Neill Collins will tell you. But anybody who plays as a wingback in a Rowdy system usually is going to end up trying to get down to the end touch line and try and get the ball back across. We know the Rowdies are obviously a very cross-heavy team, and so possibly this is something that Jordan Doherty had to develop while he was over there. I suppose, we're going to have to see what kind of player he's actually turned into in that time. Carlos, I'm assuming that you were unable to find any highlights of him during his time in the Irish League. Maybe I'm wrong with that.
Yeah, no, to be honest, I did struggle to find some of his highlights online. Was really basing it off of game recaps and then, stats I found online from his several appearances over there for Bohemian. Also, kind of went back and just looked at some of like fan tweets and whatnot, because I mean, it's usually not a good metric for, I guess, how players are performing, but it's a good way to gauge how fans think about players. And again,
Absolutely.
there's really nothing like insanely that popped out. I think a lot of people had gained a lot of respect for Jordan Doherty over there. Because again, there's nothing, he never had any particularly bad games from what I could find. Yeah, played a ton of right back, got involved in one goal. And again, just the type of guy that didn't seem to make many errors at all. In fact, like I said, he was only listed as having made one error that led to a goal, unfortunately. But I think what you're bringing up is good to mention here because having played right back for all those games over there in Ireland for Bohemian is going to be super beneficial for him. Getting involved in the attack, scoring that one goal. I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're playing defense most of your career, getting up and scoring a goal at all is kind of big. It means he's getting involved in the attack. It means he's creating chances. He scored 2 goals across his time with us. So in one season over there, he's, almost there. And like you said, our wing backs, our fullbacks get involved in the attack. It seems like we could be shaping up to create some sort of revert to like the 4 in the back formation. Neill Collins had been experimenting with, and Jordan Doherty might be a prime candidate to be starting at right back most games. Yeah, that being said, I think just one more thing to mention is that he is still only 22 years old, which is kind of crazy because it seems like he's played, a ton with us. Went one season overseas to Bohemian, comes back, and he's still only 22 years old. This is a guy that's still a ton of potential, hasn't even necessarily entered the prime of his ability, the prime of his career. So his ceiling is still very, very high. It's a player that can continue to develop here in the Rowdies. And I think, it differentiates him a bit from a Forrest Lasso kind of guy who is much more of a veteran of the game at this point. He's played a lot more seasons, has a ton more games under his belt. It's a guy that is basically at his prime right now. Like the ceiling is he's met his ceiling, I would say. And that's fantastic because we need those kind of players. We need a veteran like him. But when it comes to Jordan Doherty, what makes me, again, more excited about him is that ceiling, that potential that he can continue to reach here under Neill Collins. And it's crazy because his floor has already been elevated so much in his time with the Rowdies. And again, in this time overseas in Bohemian, it's a very competitive league. Bohemian is a very big team in Ireland. And that creates a very, very good environment to create a dynamic, talented young player. Because there's a lot of pressure for a big team like that in Ireland. So I'm really, really happy he had that opportunity. Again, it's something where I wish I could have seen more of his games from his time in Bohemian live. Yeah. But it's one of those things where I guess there wasn't really a reason to because it was just assumed he had finished his time here with the Rowdies. So a pleasant surprise, to put it very, very mildly, but a surprise that I think all Rowdies fans can be very, very excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. With that said, Carlos, I think the next guy was a little bit less of a surprise when he was actually announced. Leading up to the announcement of this next player, I think most people on Twitter were like, so are you going to announce him? When are you going to announce him? I'm waiting for the announcement. Just go ahead and announce him. And that player ultimately did turn out to be Forrest Lasso. He returns to the Rowdies after a season abroad in the Swedish top flight. And there he was with GIF Sundsvall, I guess it is. Carlos, I think that you have a bit more information on not only how the season went for him, but maybe how the season went for his team as well, maybe a little unfortunately.
Right. Yeah, a bit more is a good way to categorize it. It really is just a bit more. He did log 1,887 minutes for GIF Sundsvall, logged 2 assists, interestingly. He's the kind of guy that you usually expect to get up on corners and finish a header or 2 throughout the season, but somehow got involved in 2 assists, didn't log a goal for GIF Sundsvall. Unfortunately for his team, they did get relegated, finished in dead last, James, with 14 points. Yeah, it was not a great season at all. And I don't know. Maybe that contributed to his wanting to leave and get involved with the team that has a chance to play for silverware again. Like, again, this is purely speculation, but it is worth noting that they didn't do too well. Forrest Lasso seemed to play decently based on the stats that I saw, but again, if it was hard to find footage from the Irish League for a big team in Ireland, it was equally, if not harder, to find footage from a team that just got relegated in the Swedish league. So I can't make my conclusions very well through that. All I can say is that Forrest Lasso is a guy who has proven talent, proven quality, and I'm excited to have him back, James. I don't know what else to say. It's really, really cool to have him back. Really, really awesome that he's back here. And again, just like the Jordan Doherty thing, basically just served as a 1-year loan. He's back in Tampa Bay after 1 season gone. But again, just to reemphasize what I said a few minutes ago, it's a guy that's already in his prime. I don't think he would have needed much more time to develop in this season away in Sweden. So I just think I know we're getting a proven center back who comes in with a lot of experience at 29 years old. It's awesome to have him back. It really is. He's a guy that I think was up there among players that just really, really deserved a title, the big title, the USL title, and unfortunately came up short in his time with us. So I'm really, really glad he's coming back and has a chance to do it again with us this season.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that we see Forrest Lasso get a 4th Defender of the Year award now.
That's crazy.
I think that's, yeah, right? I mean, it's one thing to have been in a league so long that you can keep racking up those titles because, yeah, you would expect him to have more of these chances like he just had in Sweden. He wanted to have one final crack at a top division tournament, and I don't fault him for that at all. As a player, you want to see exactly how good you are. You want to see what your ceiling is, exactly like you just said. But unfortunately, with that not working out in terms of them actually staying in the first division, then yeah, why not come back to a place that he's maybe a little bit more comfortable? Not only the United States as opposed to Sweden, where everyone does at least, or most people at least, speak the language. I don't know if he learned, or I don't know how much Swedish, but maybe there was an intensive course before he went over there. Either way, he comes back over here. He'll have a much better grasp on the language, and he's obviously very familiar with the Tampa Bay area, the St. Pete area in particular, where the Rowdies will continue to play. So I think that this is just beneficial for him, probably his family as well. I would imagine that, like you said, he comes back here, and with the team that they're building, either we are going to have a very good roster one way or another. But I'm thinking that with the announcements that are yet to be made, and there's speculation here and speculation there. We just did our own speculation podcast last week, of course. I think that only has the coaching staff here proven their ability to build a good roster, something that we've hit on several times already. But yeah, I think that we can all be expectant that this is going to be a team that will be able to challenge for that again. And if Forrest Lasso does come back wanting to get that, he wrote online, when it was announced, his last tweet based on that was, we've got unfinished business. And I'm thinking that we do. I'm thinking that as a team, as a club, they want to go, and the Eastern Conference is, that's all fine and good. That's not the ultimate trophy here.
Yeah.
And I think that everybody knows that. So
yeah,
is what that's the most hopeful for.
Fully agree. Frankly, James, I'm a bit tired of hearing the term unfinished business in every offseason. So I'd like that to finally be finished if we can, get through with that and win the big title. So hopefully next season we're not talking about unfinished business and we're talking about business to repeat. I guess, I don't know. I'm sure there's a way to make it more catchy branding in the offseason, but whatever, that's besides the point, James. Let's win that title first. And I think Forrest Lasso is a huge piece in helping us to potentially get there. Obviously, it's worth noting again, we're talking about a guy who's won the USL Defender of the Year award 3 times. That's crazy, first of all. Let's say that again. 3 times defender of the year in the USL is wild. To have that kind of quality back is, I don't know, like it really is just such a huge signing. You can't put it into words when it comes to you know, maintaining quality at this league and pushing for creating even better roster than last year and the year before. It's hard to do in the USL. There's always a ton of roster turnaround. We've been really lucky in the past few seasons. Somehow, I think we might be creating a roster that just keeps getting better and better. I don't know how we do it. I don't know how the front office is doing it, but I think this is a team that genuinely has a chance to compete for a title once again. For a minute this offseason, it felt like we were just kind of clearing out house and restarting. And to a certain extent, we are, because it is a very, very new team when it comes to the kind of players we're bringing in, lots of new faces. But that being said, this is not a team that's, to put it in NFL terms, tanking for Trevor Lawrence or something like that. We're not like throwing in the towel and, I don't know, just trying to rebuild for the following season. There's a front office that really wants to win a title every year. And I think all the Rowdies fans can really appreciate that. So thank you to any front office people that are listening. Keep doing your job. We love you. Good things coming, I'm sure. And with that being said, James, generally talking about all these big pieces, I think I've exhausted how much I'm excited about Forrest Lasso. Like, I really don't think there's anything else to say. This is literally a huge signing, like physically a large person, and also just an incredible player, and a great personality. This is like genuinely from what I've seen and from his time on the field for us, he's been like one of the most passionate competitors I've seen for the Rowdies. And that's something I can really, really appreciate. A guy on the field pushing everybody to play better, pushing everybody to, give that extra 10%, and finish the game strong. I'm excited about this. With that being said, what do we think that these last two signings and any upcoming signings that, we might know about or we might not know about, any signings that we can take a stab in the dark about, what do these signings we've seen the past couple of weeks mean for us? Do you see, I hinted at maybe a possibility of a back four once again. Do you agree with me? Do you see any formation taking place here, or is it still too early in the offseason for you?
To be perfectly honest on this one, I think it is probably too early because, you put together a starting 11 out of these players, and I don't want to say that it's got holes or anything like that. I think it would actually be relatively strong, at least in the starting 11. But you do need to consider the, not only the length of the season and injuries. That's something that they do every year, but you also need to consider the players that are available in certain positions, and there's double up right now. Now, obviously, that's going to account for depth, but where does the doubling up, where does that kind of, stop and start, I suppose? Maybe these guys that we have on the roster are actually not doubled, and this is going to be a guy who starts at this position. This is going to be a guy who starts at a different position than we've ever seen. So there are different things that I need to consider before I want to go ahead and say that. All of that now being said, I do also want to put out there that I might see something taking shape, as much as it is probably almost certainly too early for me to do so. I can see something here, but who can say what it is? Now, you said you saw a 4-4-2. I'm going to go ahead and say what I had the potential for with this roster, as I see it, is a 3-4-3. But I think that you and I could probably debate that back and forth here. So let's go ahead and see what your 4-4-2, what you could possibly see that looking like. I feel like I might know who you have at the back there, who you have at the back four.
Yeah, I think the back's pretty clear right now. And I think my biggest hesitancy about saying we take a four in the back formation definitively is that there's not a ton of depth right now for what would be a back four. I think the clear starting back line would be your, Forrest Lasso and Freddie Kleeman as your center backs. Aaron Guillen out at left back. He's played a lot of that last season. Filled in really well at left back, and I think he can played a lot of center back, but I think he can very naturally move into a left back. And then I guess the question would be Connor Antley or Jordan Doherty at right back. Personally, if it's still the Jordan Doherty I remember from last season and the seasons prior, this is my roommate in the door. If you want to say hi. Oh, he just left. Never mind. If it's still the Jordan Doherty I remember from a couple seasons ago, I would personally like to see him slot in at right back over Connor Antley. I think defensively he is much more sound than Connor Antley, but I think Connor Antley brings a bit more attacking presence to the team. So these are two guys that are very dynamic and can kind of play wherever Neill Collins wants them to. So I think that's kind of up in the air, and jury's out on that one. That being said, again, my biggest concern is depth for that. Maybe there's some signings coming up this week, next couple of weeks. I think the forwards unit is kind of thin with officially only one forward listed, but we do know Leo Fernandez played forward last year and Deion Harris did as well. Yeah. So maybe we have 3-ish forwards. So who knows? I think we maybe resign or sign one more forward and go out and maybe get 1 or 2 more defenders. I'd be much more comfortable about saying we're running a back 4 if we sign at least one more, defender. Yeah, that would be my back 4. Honestly, I wouldn't be able to tell you who is going to run the 4 in the midfield. There's so many names in the midfield. I think it would be very totally a shot in the dark for me to tell you that. Do you have any thoughts on who would play in the midfield? I think my only real guess is that back line. But as far as midfield goes, I think it's totally up in the air. Maybe you have your Zach Hervo at center midfield and pairing up with Lewis Hilton, and then out on the wings, you'd have Armin and Dalgard. I think that'd be my stab in the dark, but totally off the top of my dome.
Yeah. So what I see out of, just out of what we have here again, not that many players on the team, but based on this I do see a 3-4-3 because I think that we are building a group that has at least so far, we have a lot of strength, more so in the defensive positions than in the attacking positions. And I think that, pretty much anybody could see that if they just look at the roster. And I'm sure the Rowdies coaching staff would probably agree. They'll probably have a couple more names that they're either trying to bring in or have signed and just need to announce. So with all those caveats, I would assume that the back 3 is going to start out as a league or an all-league defender, Aaron Guillen at the left, Forrest Lasso, who is a 3-time defender of the league, in the center.
Not bad.
And I'm assuming at this point that Freddie Kleeman will also start. I assume that he will start to the right of Forrest Lasso because he's another tall guy, like you said, but he comes with a very good pedigree. Just to go over this new signings background a little bit more. He's originally from Southern California. That's where he grew up playing. And then he went to the University of Washington up in Washington State. The Huskies actually have a very good soccer program on the men's side. I believe they do on the women's side as well. But I'm pretty sure, won the national championship in his time there. And he was, one of a very good partnership in the back for Washington. And he ultimately ended up getting drafted, but he did not get to play much last year for Austin FC because with his coming back from that, we don't know what kind of player he is, at least at the professional level, because we haven't had a chance to see it naturally. That just is the nature of the game when injuries are involved. But with all of that out of the way, I think that he is, clear as a starter from this roster's perspective. And then with 3 in the back, not only does that offer positions for Connor Antley to play in the future, or Jordan Doherty to play in the future, or anybody else that we're hopefully going to be bringing in, but I think that kind of shores us up in a way that Neill Collins likes. Neill Collins did the 3 at the back for not as much last year, but much more the year before that. And then, pretty frequently last year as well. Anyway, I think that is what it's going to shape up as. Now, the 2 wingbacks that I have in that system are Jake Arman and Connor Antley out on those sides, because they are supposed to get up the wing a lot more in that system and in that shape. In front of them, I would have Lewis Hilton sitting in front of the back four. That's what he has always done for the Rowdies, and it's what I can only imagine him continuing to do because he is obviously extremely good at it. And if anything, he is the only guy on this roster that is kind of undervalued by the league. He doesn't have as many of the individual personal plaudits that Aaron Guillen now has won, and Jordan Scarlett won the year before, and Forrest Lasso won the year before, and Evan Loro won the year before. So, why Lewis Hilton has been left off of those, I'm not too sure, but I'm not the one giving out the awards, obviously. Zach Harivo, I think, will be his partner in the midfield. He will be somebody who doesn't sit back as much as Lewis Hilton does, but actually gets kind of back and forth and tries to help out the attack with his physical presence a lot more. And then up top, the way that it would shape up, obviously, with the roster that we have, is JJ Williams be up top as the striker, because that is his natural position. And not only that, Neill Collins confirmed that he said JJ Williams has not probably played as much as a number 9 as he would like to in his career so far. So I think that that's a pretty good hint and where he wants him to play. And then the other two starters that I see, at least at this point, are on the left, I would say Dayon Harris, who is right-footed, and on the right, I would say Leo Fernandez, who is left-footed. At different points over the course of last season, both of those two players played in roles where they could kind of just go wherever the hell they wanted. Leo Fernandez was the most effective at that, winning the league MVP. Obviously, it takes quite a bit to get to that individual accolade. But I think that he has not only the ability to do that role again and just, again, go wherever the hell he wants, but I think that Dayon Harris was kind of being set up to fill in when Leo Fernandez either couldn't be there or kind of do the same thing but shadow it on the other side. And Dayon Harris had a lot of good times in this past season where it was mostly, I think, when he was allowed to just kind of run at players. Now, when you give somebody the keys to have that position and they're just allowed to kind of dribble, take people on, see what happens, there's going to be naturally, just because of the nature of the game, a low success rate, because unless you're Lionel Messi, dribbling past players over and over is going to be difficult to do. But Dayon Harris proved that he has a good enough success rate to continue to get the chances to do that. And so that's what I'm kind of thinking here. That would be my 3-4-3. Now, That being said, I would obviously like to see this fill out a little more. Somebody that I wrote after our episode about, what our personal wish list would be, what our holiday wish list would be, as it was supposed to start as. I wrote underneath that on Twitter that there were a couple of players that I would like to see us sign afterwards, just because I think that I found them after we had already done our research for that episode, and news had come out about them. So I wanted to put it out on this episode that at least 2 more players that they could sign specifically for that striker role are 2 U.S. men's national team players, one a bit older and one a bit younger. Those are Dom Dwyer and Sebastian Soto. And I'll just go through them really quickly because I think that it would be relevant for what we were just discussing about, the shape that the Rowdies are trying to take. Dom Dwyer is a striker, formerly of USF. He is a USF I guess not a grad necessarily. He did join the Generation Adidas program, and then he went to MLS. Within his time in MLS, he ended up getting called up to the U.S. national team, even though he was originally born in England and grew up there, but he got U.S. citizenship and he got a couple of appearances for the national team. Also was married to U.S. women's national team player Sydney Leroux, although I believe they are now divorced. So I think that Don Dwyer would be a good signing because he has the pedigree of MLS to play in that position and allow both Leo Fernandez and Dayon Harris to work off of him sufficiently. And then the other player, Sebastian Soto, is a U.S. national team player who, unfortunately, it just hasn't really worked out in his time abroad. He has been signed by a couple different teams. He's been out on a couple different loans, and it just really hasn't worked out too well. I think that, honestly, he could use with a change of scenery and, come on back to the U.S., get your confidence back, and see how it goes from there. So those are 2 strikers that I could see filling in that role well, and I wouldn't mind them doing with, that kind of formation around them. If I could just wave a wand, of course, like maybe our fielder Weston McKennie for the national team and request, that would be what I see it as right now.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that was, just to talk a little bit about maybe some concerns that are still left with the players we have signed and the players we have yet to sign or yet to announce at least. I think one of the things that concerns me is, I was doing this whole bit about wanting to sign a forward for so long. We got JJ Williams.
Yep, exactly.
I think I'm just, like, I don't want to try and it sounds like I might bash him here, but it's not what I'm trying to do. I think we still lack somebody who we can consider a proven goal scorer, a guy who can kind of sit at the striker role, and we know he's going to be in the right place at the right time and put the ball in the net. I think that's what we had a long time in Sebastian Gonzalez. We had him a long time in Georgi Hristov.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, not to compare anybody to those legends of the club, big boots to fill. But I think a guy like Dom Dwyer, who totally don't remember how old he is, Dom Dwyer is fully a guy who is a proven goal scorer.
32.
Yeah, 32 years old, veteran of the game at this point, would slot in very, very well for replacing Sebastian Gonzalez. I think it's a great example of somebody I would love to have on the team, a forward who I know would be in the right place at the right time, and a local-ish guy. Went to USF, like you said. Unfortunately, spent some time over there in Orlando, which is kind of gross, but whatever. Had a great season over there. I mean, he's kind of a legend over there as well. If you ask some of the longtime fans of Orlando City about Dom Dwyer, they will bring up very, very fond memories of him in his younger days over there. So it's a guy who has a lot of experience putting the ball in the net. I think that's what we need. JJ Williams is a great, great guy, great potential. Again, pretty young guy, though. Hasn't scored a ton of goals in his career. Obviously, we have a Leo Fernandez, but frankly, I don't want to lower his ceiling for next season, but I think that performance he had last year was just surreal. I'm really worried it's not possible to maintain again and maintain scoring at that rate, especially because of his position that might be kind of more on the wing. He doesn't really play in the forward striker role. So I don't know. Not to sound super negative or anything, just a general concern about how I would like to see a guy like Dom Dwyer, experienced veteran, experienced striker who can put the ball in the net. I don't know. I really don't want to be in a position where we have everything we need to compete for a title, and we get to the season and we realize, oh crap, we're scoring 1 goal across 2 games. We're scoring 2 goals across 3 games. We're getting shut out. I think there's too much talent everywhere else to have that happen. So I'd really, really like a more veteran striker to be signed as well. I think it would really round out the team, in my opinion. That being said, a couple other defenders would be nice as well for depth, especially if we run the 4 in the back formation like I've predicted. But I fully hear your side of things, James. I think it might be very logical to run 3 in the back. Either way, we need a little bit more depth for me to feel comfortable. That being said, there's still some time this offseason. There's still players to be announced, players to be signed. There's open tryouts on February 5th still. So maybe we pick up a guy who's just, putting balls into the back of the net every single time he touches the ball. I don't know. There's a lot of things to be revealed still. So I think there's a lot of time for those concerns to be settled in the next several weeks.
So, yeah, I think that all of those are important pieces. And with year 442, my question was going to be, what things do you think that we need to fill in? Obviously, I think that, most people would want those, even if they weren't trying to build necessarily a 442 or a 343 or a 433, whatever. It would probably just be good to have some more attackers, some more depth pieces. And here's one of my big questions going into this is right now, Zach Haribo has come in. He's had, a couple of good years in the USL Championship. He is originally a New England Revolution Academy. Didn't quite make it at the MLS level, obviously, so he has come down to the USL Championship. And he was a very good player for Birmingham Legion, made the playoffs this past season, and as well as the season before, I should say. With all of that being said, now he is a good player. Do you expect that he would be a good starter to put next to Lewis Hilton? Is he going to be someone that you like to see there, or is it possibly the case that you want to see somebody, somebody with an even bigger name? I'm not sure what you're thinking with Zach Harivo. I'm not sure what I'm thinking, in all honesty,
Yeah.
with Zach Harivo. I think that he would be a very depth piece because he's already so good, but I think that he might also be a starting caliber player. So I'm just not sure where I even fall on that.
Yeah, I think looking at the other names that stand out right now on the roster as competition for that starting spot, Jan Ekra, who is a good player. We know he has good talent. He comes in and has played well when he's coming off the bench and when he's had to start last season and past seasons. Frankly, I think Zach Harivo beats him out just from the outsider perspective. It's a guy who feels just from watching him much more agile, much more mobile, can get on the end of headers. Seems like he can create a lot more dangerous chances than a Jan Ekra right now. And again, younger guy, full 90-minute player guy if necessary. I feel like he is starting material, frankly. Yeah, I mean, I like him in that pair with Lewis Hilton. I think it's really a matter of just seeing how it plays out. Hopefully we see it in the preseason. I'm sure Neill Collins is thinking about that very question right now, James, and wondering maybe they need to pick up a new midfielder as well and add some more competition to that center midfield. I think Charlie Dennis, if I'm not mistaken, is more of a winger, right? So I'm not sure.
I remember him as that from Oakland Roots, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not sure he's much competition for that central midfield position. I guess Jordan Doherty as well, if he goes back to what he usually played with us. But I don't know. After a full season at right back, I think it's pretty hard for Neill Collins to move him back to the midfield. Although he is listed as a midfielder on our website, on rowdiesoccer.com.
Important to note.
Yeah, jury's out on that. I think it would be kind of silly to move him away from a position where he seems to have played very well, in a position where he's grown in very comfortably. But again, it's a huge dynamic piece. He can play wherever he needs to. That being said, seems like he'd slot him in at right back, and I think Zach Harivo would be, out of the few options we have right now at central midfield, Zach Harivo seems to be the starter, in my opinion, with Lewis Hilton. Yeah, he has very, very good quality. We've seen him play against us in the playoffs. Just a really lanky guy that really stands out on the pitch. It's really hard to miss him, especially with his hair as well. He's a good player, and I'm excited to see what he can do to create more opportunities for us in the midfield. Hope he's a guy who can rip a couple shots from outside the box. It's a thing I've always wanted to see more out of this team. Always feels like our midfielders are a little scared to rip a shot from outside the 18. So I think this is the guy that can do that, create chaos in the box, create chaos with his size in the box as well. Yeah, I think he's starting material, James.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I think, honestly, it also depends on who we bring in. And,
Right.
If Zach Harivo ends up as the top other midfielder that we see out there, I will certainly not be complaining. I'll put it that way.
Sure.
Some other potential options, just to say, while we have this opportunity, if the Tampa Bay Rowdies want to bring in a couple other players on loan, I might suggest other U.S. men's national team or U.S. youth national team players, such as Uli Yanes. He is currently on loan in the Austrian second division from Bundesliga side Wolfsburg. So I think that would be a very good signing. He has a couple of caps with the U.S. men's national team as a winger, and he seems to be, another one who's trying to get his confidence back. So give him a shot. Jonathan Tompkinson, who's at Norwich City, he is a defender, and he seems to be looking for playing time. He's knocking on the first team door there. So if he wants to come out on loan, just like Jordan Doherty did, we should be a pretty good landing spot, I would say. The last one that I wanted to say, just while we have this chance and, we can continue to speculate wildly like we did last week, Angel Montes de Oca is a Dominican central midfielder and someone that I saw at the U20 championship for CONCACAF, which was also the Olympics qualifiers. But yeah, the Dominican Republic qualified for the Olympics pretty miraculously, and this was one of their best players. So he's a young guy, obviously, and I think that Dominican players are, very talented, but they don't have a lot of good reputation because their national teams haven't done that well. Why not give him a chance, and why not let him see if he can build up that reputation just a little bit more? That's kind of my last little bit here. Is if we're going to give out a couple of more spots in the midfield to potential starters or maybe even potential depth pieces, I would definitely throw him one. But I suppose I'll have to put together a scouting report for Neill Collins before the season starts.
Yeah, good idea. Preseason's coming up. I actually don't know when they start training. Might be much sooner than I think, but those preseason games always kind of seem to ramp up in late February, early March. So get that in before then, James. I love hearing about young players that can get opportunity here. So I would love to see that, especially good depth pieces, even if they're not starting material. You can learn under a guy like Forrest Lasso. It's a guy that can really share a lot when it comes to his experience and talent. So again, maybe not starting material, but always really, really good depth piece. And who knows, maybe he's just like insane. He shows up here and just outplays, Freddie Kleeman, and gets into that starting spot. But I would love to see guys like him, young guys who can come in here, build a name for themselves. I get some playing time, compete for a starting spot, and be great depth pieces for us. I really, really, like I've repeated over and over, I'm worried about the depth more than anything. But again, still pretty early. A little bit of time left before preseason ramps up. Again, general concerns, depth. Would like a, proven scorer up top. Plenty of time to see that happen. So all we can do now is wait and see, James.
Yeah, exactly. So with that all out of the way, let's move on to our extra time segment here. Couple little pieces to hit on before we actually close out this episode. The Rowdies should, of course, be making a couple more announcements coming up this week. Hopefully, if not this week, there's the rest of the month of January and February before the season actually even gets started. We don't know when they'll be coming out, but there are announcements to come. So let's see who it is. Let's see who the Rowdies still have coming in this season. And if it's any of those guys that we went through tonight, Carlos, I guess we get, a part of the agent's fee. Is that correct? I think that's what we agreed to.
I hope so. I'd love that. Are you kidding me?
Something to put on my resume, certainly. Now, something that you mentioned earlier, Carlos, when we were talking a couple weeks back about up-and-coming young players for different national teams, in this case, Ecuador, the CONMEBOL U20 Championship starts on Thursday. That is the South American U20 Championship. They are trying to qualify for the Men's Under-20 World Cup, which actually is this upcoming summer. I believe before the Women's World Cup. There are a lot of tournaments at all times. I can tell you that as a soccer fan. Carlos, where can we find it on TV? You said that there might be some creative ways to watch these games, maybe?
Creative ways is certainly a way to describe them. It will be, I believe the broadcasting rights belong to Caracol, the Colombian outlet. It is being hosted in Colombia, so makes sense. There are ways to watch Caracol in the U.S. I'm sure. I think some TV providers have them with like a Spanish package. I'm not fully sure. So, hey, keep an eye on my Twitter or Discord or something, and then maybe I share some creative ways to watch those games. There's lots of fun ways to watch that, and lots of fun games coming up, honestly. Very selfishly, I'm really, really excited because the Ecuadorian U20 team is super duper exciting. It really, really is. Currently the defending champions in this tournament. We won the last edition of that before going out to Poland for the U20 World Cup and putting on a really, really incredible performance at that tournament. Came in third at the U20 World Cup in Poland, falling to South Korea in the semifinals and beating Italy in the third place match. Really, really, really fun team, really fun game. A lot of those guys were on this World Cup team from this past edition of the tournament. Yep. Yeah, lots of fun games coming up because there's a lot of talent, as you can imagine, throughout South America. Unfortunately, comes at a strange time because it's the case for a lot of the South American U20 teams. It is especially the case for Ecuador that a lot of the young guys who are currently playing overseas, wherever they are, because there's a ton of young guys, 18, 19-year-olds in academies in Europe. Hard to get permission to get them to come down and play a U20 tournament, believe it or not. I believe it is only one of the guys playing in Europe that got permission to come back. Player from the Ajax Academy, and I'm totally slipping on his name. But yeah, the rest of the team is coming entirely from the Ecuadorian academies, currently from the Ecuadorian league. And if you've kept up with my Twitter at all, you see me talk a lot about Independiente del Valle's academy. I don't know, basically the up and coming. What's the Barca academy called, James? The one that it seems like a ton of insane players come from. It's that of Ecuador right now. And yeah, it's gonna be really, really fun to see these young guys show up and show out. Really, really fun tournament coming up, and I'm just gonna shut my mouth before I keep talking about this tournament. Long story short, really, really fun tournament. Ecuador has a great team. It could be even better if these young guys from playing in Europe could show up. That being said, lots of talent from the Ecuadorian league. Same goes for Colombia, for Argentina, for Brazil. It's going to be a blast. And I'd highly, highly recommend checking it out because these are the guys that will be playing at the World Cup in 2026 here in the U.S. So definitely worth checking out, James.
Yep, I will be trying to watch it as much as I can, and we'll see if maybe my VPN comes in handy. We're not doing an ad for any specific VPN, but if that comes along, I have a perfect example right here. The last point in extra time that I wanted to hit on is that the U.S. women's national team and the U.S. men's national team both have games coming up. The U.S. women's national team actually play tonight, this Tuesday at 10 p.m. When you're listening to this, the game will be over, obviously, but check out the results. And they do have another game coming up. And then the U.S. men's national team have a game coming up, I believe, on the 25th. So just keep an eye out. And unfortunately, they're not all at the best times because the women's national team is playing over New Zealand in preparation for their upcoming World Cup, obviously. And the men's national team is playing over just on the West Coast. So it's just not great timing for us here. But yeah, keep an eye out on those and at least follow along, see how the team's doing, that kind of stuff. And here we are with one more piece of news related to the Rowdies, actually. They are hosting the open tryouts again on February 5th. We talked about this last week and we had a little bit of fun with it, but they are coming up here. If you do want to actually give out a chance and see if you have what it takes, this is your actual opportunity. The link will be on the Rowdies website, of course. And I believe, Carlos, what did you say the fee was?
Ouch. I'm slipping on it. I want to say a 150 is what I remember, but I could be totally blanking on that. So don't quote me on that unless you give me about, 10 more seconds or so to go back and look at it. And right now I'm just stalling so that I have a chance to do that. So I'm just saying words at this point and I can't find it. So I'm just going to estimate 150 right now. But I might be totally, I'm blanking on it. That being said, one more piece of news. Hold on, James. Time out. I found the name of the player coming from Ajax for the Ecuadorian U20 team. Patrick Delgado. Keep an eye out for him. He's a special talent. He's really, really good. And I love watching him play. Sorry, Patrick Delgado. Just remember that name.
There we go. Everyone listening, thank you so much for tuning in this week. I think that this is where we are going to call it quits for the night. And it was a good one. It was a good one to talk about all of this stuff. And of course, the tryouts at the end here. Please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at RBLR Sports. You can get at me on Twitter if you'd like. I am at RBLR James K. Carlos, what about you?
I am at Carlos TPA10 on Twitter, and those are my loud roommates in the background. Come follow me on Twitter. I'm tweeting about the Rowdies, Georgetown basketball, the usual. That's Jacob, my roommate, on the other side of the door. He doesn't have a Twitter, so you can't follow him. But you can follow me, Carlos TPA10, and I'm sure I love chatting with random people that follow me. It's kind of an issue. I spend way too much time on social media. So if you follow me, I guarantee you I'm willing to chat. I don't know. I like meeting people. So drop a follow, send a DM. Who knows? Who cares? Ask me a question. I don't know. You want to talk about Georgetown soccer? You want to talk about Georgetown lacrosse? I don't care. Just shoot me something. I'm bored.
All right, Carlos. Afterwards, I'm going to ask you here where you think Daniel Wu is going once he now that he's graduated. And I don't know if he actually got drafted to MLS or not, but we'll see. Please like and subscribe to our podcast. We are on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Apple and Google Podcasts. We are on YouTube and all other major podcast platforms. And with a schedule out for us to play this upcoming season, we will say, come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.